私は3年前に離婚してね。いや、正確には妻に逃げられたんだが。
Oh no, another one?
何しろ、私は妻の言葉に耳を傾け
Another workaholic, eh?
こっちに耳を傾けているのがほとんどだったからね。あなたはただ人の心を覗くコレクターだ。とね。
ドクター。
Whoa.
あんた異常だよ。
かもしれないな。人の心の奥底に潜む深い淵を覗き込むという作業。私自身もその深い淵に沈み込むという可能性をはらんでいるからね。で、4番目の被害者は18歳の女性だったね。
Not to that, of course, but to the approach here.
興奮を覚えたかい？
そんなことより12番目の殺人について。
Oh god, is he about to kill him?
クロップハウスのハンナ・ケンプ夫人、52歳だね。
Quite the...
俺は。
いや、この件は話さなくていい。今はその前の11件に関しての話が聞きたいんだ。
Reminds you of Mindhunter.
いいね。君の性的興奮のピークは殺人を犯す前。
Yes, let's get into the mind of these killers. An exploration of the sociopathic mind, right? Anthropology, sociology, psychology. Bring it all together. Yes, let's explore it.
以上のように被害者は16歳から18歳の長髪の少女に限られた。ただし彼は12件目の殺人も自白した。
52 years old though.
しか
That
し
one.
この件の被害者であるケンプ夫人は52歳と高齢の上、セックスの跡がない。
Something changed.
これを友人の依頼で行ったと語ることによって捜査攪乱を引き起こさせ。
Look at this. Another fantastic standalone episode character, isn't it?
私だよ、ルーディ。
Oh, Tenma. Rudy. Okay, I've got a name. Perhaps an associate.
天馬。いやー、驚いたよ。
Kind of has
すま
to.
ない。こんな尋ね方しかできなかった。私が連続殺人犯だと思うか。
I mean, this seems to be the authority on that.
新聞やテレビ、大学時代の友人同士の噂だけではね。
They go back to college.
しかし、なぜよりによって私を訪ねてきたんだ。
Oh.
私たちは仲が良かったわけじゃない。それどころか君は私を軽蔑していた。
Okay.
君と目が合うたびに思ったよ。君は私を軽蔑しているとね。
The man does like to analyze, doesn't he? It's kind of his thing.
君は犯罪心理学の権威だと聞いている。
Okay.
その君に見てもらいたいものがある。
Okay, this is it. Careful.
僕を見て、僕を見て、僕の中のモンスターがこんなに大きくなった
It's going to explode.
助けて。
Hellfit. I know that.
破裂しそうだ。
Oh.
なるほど。そのヨハンこそが院長殺害の真犯
Great
人であり、
approach.
世話になった養父母を次々と殺し、今のようなメッセージを残して再び姿を消し
He's a
た。
part of it now.
そして一刻も早く君の身の潔白を証明したい。
I mean, that too, but
20年近く昔、ある名門大学医学部にトップでなければ気が済まない男がいた。ところが一人の日本人学生が侵入し、
Is that young Tenma?
一変した。彼は社交的
I think it is.
すぐみんなの人望を集めた。これを落としたら今までの努力は水の泡だ。
Oh no. Did you cheat? Oh yeah, he cheated.
男は最後の手段に出た。
He doesn't look that much younger in this, to be honest.
日本人はそれを誰にも言わなかった。
Of course he didn't,
結果、男は見事にトップに返り咲いた。
but it didn't matter. Oh, those eyes though.
それでその2つのメッセージから何か分かることはないか。
君の言うところの多重人格か？
This is interesting. Yeah, let's hear
君
it.
はある人格が犯罪を犯し、別のある人格がそれを止めようとしていると言いたいんだね。確かに連続殺人者の犯行現場にこの手のメッセージが残された。
Though it's still relatively early
時と
days,
して
right?
それは罪を逃れるための方便の可能性もある。そこを見極めるのが私たち精神分析医の腕の見せ所なんだ。大抵の人は連続殺人犯が内向的な人間
Yeah,
だと
look at
誤
Johan,
解して
for
いるが
example.
それは大間違いだ。彼らの中には知能が高く社交的で話のうまい人間もいる。
Spot on.
彼らは大嘘つきなんだよ。
As he fills the frame
私
and
は
his fat face.
彼にもてあそばれているのか
I think he's nailed it.
まあ待ちたまえ結論を急ぐのはよく
It's
ない。
a good hypothesis.
もっとゆっくりヨハンの話を聞かせてくれないか。
Oh, whoa.
この男
Ah, getting this man's opinion.
よくわかるよ。
He's kind of like the co-ed killer, isn't he?
は
A
どういう
take on
点
that.
でだい？
彼の言う怪物。
怪物はいるか。確かにいるよ。君の中にも彼の中にも私の中に
Oh
も
yeah,
って
oh
怪
yeah.
物はいる。
やめろ。机上の論理で怪物はこの世に存在すると言っているんだ。
There's one sitting right across you.
なんだその目は。
Yeah, careful.
そういう目で私を見るな。私は軽蔑されるのが嫌いだ。
Giving him a bit of a reality check, I think.
回収を。
怖いか怖いか
Oh god. That's actually terrifying.
世の中にはもっと恐ろしいものがあるんだ。いいことを教えてやるよ。
奴は確実にあなたの元へやってくるんでしょうな。
必ず来ます。
Ah.
その時は直ちに連絡しますよ。逮捕後も彼を私の研究材料として提供していただきたい。非常に興味深い犯罪者なのでね。
Tenma didn't say anything all that time ago, but this guy just spills it.
地下の物置だ。そこに行けばあんたにもわかる。
This is a great episode, but it's such a difference from the last episode.
そこにある。
そして夫人の帰宅直後、2階のベッドルームに押し入り犯行に及んだ。
And it was a request from a friend.
何の変哲もない。ただ写真立てだ。
Oh, is that him? Young
ケン
Jurgen?
プ夫人が写っている。
That's a great shot.
ユルゲンスの言う怪物の証拠などここにはない。やはり12件目の殺人は捜査撹乱のために行った。
Hold on, hold on.
またその友人を怪物と呼ぶことで。
俺は子供の頃、母親に毎日折檻され
Is that not Jurgen in the photos? Glasses and blue shirt.
お袋の大事にしていたでかい人形があった。髪の長い
Yeah?
女の子の人形だ。俺は叩かれながらその人形に助けを求めた。だがそいつは俺を見てニヤニヤ笑っているだけだった。どこを見てもおふくろおふくろおふくろ。俺のことをずーっと見張ってやがった。
ユルゲンスはここを自分で子供時代の物置そっくりに作り変えたというのか。
That's him.
これは子供の頃のユルゲンスじゃないか。バカな。子供時代にケンプ夫人との接点はないはずだ。
Oh.
上からユルゲンスの子供の頃の顔を。
Did Jurgen do this himself, or
これもケンプ夫人に子供はいなかったはずだ。この少年はお前は誰なんだ。
oh, is that Johan?
怪物がいるという証拠。
Ah, he knows about that monster.
俺は友達から来た手紙に書いてある通りにしたんだ。
So this lady took in foster children as well.
ある日、俺のところに差出人も宛名もない真っ白な封筒の手
A
紙が
friend,
届
he
いた。
called him.
俺のことを理解してるだろう。妙に慣れ慣れしい文章に最初は腹が立った。それからその手紙は毎週届いた。奴は手紙まで。
Imagine this man calling him a
と
demon.
ころがいつの間にかその手紙が待ち遠しくなった。楽しいんだよその手紙。思ったよ。あいつは本当に友達かもしれないってね。ある屋敷の物置に行ってみろ。
Ah,
ケン
he
プ
set
夫
it
人の
up.
屋敷の物置か。
Those glasses, though.
なんであいつは俺の子供の頃を知ってるんだ
Yeah,。he's got a knack for that type of thing.
ケンプ夫人の屋敷で俺は混乱した。奴は手紙まで。
A letter demon.
その友達はケンプ夫人にも手紙を。
Oh. Secret stash. Go on then.
これは
Ah, same writing.
これも僕の中のモンスターがこん
Hell's
なに
I remember that from Dark.
同じだ。友達よ、ヨハンは実在する。
まだか。8時
Good. As expected of Tenma.
コール警部。
Oh shit. Maybe I spoke too soon.
来ました。髪の長い東洋人
Yeah,
で
it's
す。
kind of tough to miss. He'll tip him off this time. Get him out of here. But how? They're surrounded.
君の言っていたことを分析してみた
Oh,
よ。
yes.
でっち上げだと思っていた。ヨハンなんてこの世にはいない。君が作り出した架空の人物だとね。今私はユルゲンスという連続殺人犯を研究しているんだがね、一件だけ彼の手口とは異なる犯行があったんだ。君は私を軽蔑していたね。
He didn't.
大学時代私が
I don't think he
してい
did.
るのを見てから君はずっと私を軽蔑していた。確かに私は軽蔑されても仕方のない人間だ。
ルディ、今はそんなことより
覚えているかい？あの時私はここにカンニングペーパーを潜ませていた。こんな風にね。
Ah, message.
逃げろ。警察に囲まれている。
見るな、歩こう。
Okay, Rudy. Good for you.
これは
ケンプ夫人邸の物置にあったものだ。ケンプ夫人に子供はいなかった。
Yeah.
おそらく君の言っていたヨハンとユルゲンスの言っていた友達は同一人物だ。君が言うように過去を消すためかもしれない。
Yeah, yeah.
君は無実だ。今さら偉そうなことは言えないが、私が分析したことを伝えておく
Go
よ。
on, give him something
ど
to...
うやってかはわからないが、ヨハンは殺人者の匂いを嗅ぎ取る。そして彼らの孤独に入り込み操ることができる。ヨハンはついに理想の家族を見つけ、そこに入り込んだ。だが、なぜ過去を消そうとするんだ？何か理由があっ
Yeah, he's
た
been
の
doing
か？
that since the beginning.
ならば今は何かの目的のためにその家族に入り込んでいるのか？何かのために。
Rudy's really into it. I hope I kind of get to see him again.
今出頭して身の潔白を証明する道もあるぞ。私が
Time to pay him back?
私は
Yeah,
自分
that's
の無
not
実
the
を晴らすた
primary
めにヨハ
concern
ンを持
here.
ってるんじゃない
君はまさかヨハンを？
ああ、そうだ。私は君を軽蔑なんかしてなかった。でもやっとこれで友達になれた。
Hmm.
だって君はあの時私のカンニング行為を。
私もあの時カンニングしてたんだよ。
Huh. Maybe he's trying to make him feel better.
天馬。
You're a good man, Tenma. Good man. Look at this. Whoa.
It's all as it should be.
The monster within? The monster inside of me?
You can only do so much.
Interesting. Huh. How about that? Right then, let's get into it. Episode 19, Monsters Abyss. I mean, it's quite the fitting title, for sure, specifically for this episode, and then, of course, for the anime, for the story as a whole. But let's focus on that ending first, because I finally do get the continuation, right? It kind of holds for a few episodes, and then I get the update. And yeah, the update is quite the fascinating one, because, again, it kind of begins with them being face-to-face, discussing something, talking, getting to know each other, right? That's the frame that I've been seeing for a few episodes now as the last frame, right? But the next frame, the continuation, it's quite interesting, isn't it? The monster is swallowed up by this farmer. In the next few frames, you see that he is essentially granted superhuman strength, right? He's able to, level up. I mean, he's able to perform his day-to-day duties much more efficiently, right? Now, yeah, this is a fascinating one because you kind of have to look at it from both perspectives, right? Is it the farmer being possessed? Is the farmer making some sort of deal, right? This symbiotic relationship letting the monster in, kind of like a mutually beneficial situation. I mean, ultimately, I do think the key component here is the fact that they are discussing things, they are talking, right? Nothing here kind of felt forceful, to me at least. Is it a case of the monster, one of the two, because of course there's two of them and they go in the opposite directions. And, I kind of linked that to, Johan and Nina or Anna, right? One of each. But again, if that is the case, it's still interesting that even Nina or Anna is presented as a monster or a monster from the woods, right? Alongside the other one. So perhaps this one kind of wants to feel human. Perhaps it wants an identity, right? And to do so, it kind of, enters this agreement with this farmer. And then again, I mentioned the symbiotic relationship, perhaps, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. Both of these entities or beings get something out of it, right? So it's interesting. It's perhaps the most dramatic shift yet. Because I actually thought that once I do see the continuation of this, it might be more so of a, kind of living together type situation. The monster, the creature learning from this farmer perhaps, and, his family, learning to live together, learning to accept each other. I thought maybe it's taken that direction. I mean, it is an intriguing continuation of it. So yeah, I'm quite excited to see how that plays out or how that continues. But let's move on to the episode itself. I thought it was a great episode. Fantastic episode, even. I just love the focus of it. The themes that are being explored. And just the tone of the episode itself. But yeah, this tone, this approach, it really kind of pulls you in, doesn't it? It just kind of wraps you up in it. At least that's how it felt for me. And it was really quite reminiscent of films like Seven, right? Zodiac. Shows like Mindhunter. The incredible Mindhunter on Netflix. So I highly recommend that to anyone. Unfortunately, it didn't really continue after season 2. But yeah, it's a phenomenal show by David Fincher, right? I mean, all three of these things I just mentioned are by David Fincher. How about that? But also, in addition to that, there is this intoxicating noir tone to this, especially in the soundtrack, in the score, right? That kind of reminded me of things like Chinatown, Sin City, Blade Runner even. So, this episode specifically really felt like it was right up my alley, even more so than usual, right? I mean, Monster has been up my alley, but, this focus here, yeah, it's something I enjoy quite a bit. You see, I mentioned Mindhunter. One of the major focuses of Mindhunter is Ed Kemper, the co-ed killer. And I believe this man, Jurgens, yes. Jurgens is essentially based on that killer, I believe. Right. I mean, everything matches. Even his backstory about his mother punishing him, beating him, and all of that. And of course, you see once again that those familiar topics are being focused on. Right. You've got nature versus nurture, the study or the potential of childhood experiences that might have molded some of these people into who they become. Right. These monsters that they end up becoming. And Jurgen certainly had quite the experience himself. He had quite the story for another fantastic, side character, impact character in Rudy. Who gets a bit of a reality check, who kind of needed that, I think. Jurgens did not like this man's approach, his really academic approach, and he did not like his attitude. Right? He thought it stinks that this man thinks he's got it figured out, that he's got all of these people, all of us figured out, that he thinks he understands what's out there, that he truly understands, right? And he tells him, he gives him an experience. He tells him about a real monster, that monsters do exist out there, right? And I'll show you. You go there, you go to that house. Mrs. Kemp, was it? The late Mrs. Kemp, the 52-year-old. It's quite the departure or deviation from his usual demographic, right? I believe they said 18 to 20-year-olds. Again, it really feels like it is their take on the co-ed killer, Ed Kemper. And, again, a little bit off topic, but, in terms of Mindhunter, my God, the actor, it's, his name escapes me at the moment, but something Britton, Cameron Britton, I believe. I may have mixed that up, but I know Britton is his last name, I think. Pretty sure. He gives an incredible performance in that role in Mindhunter. I really implore you to check it out if this is your cup of tea, this type of thing. Mindhunter, incredible Netflix show. It's one of those rare gems on Netflix. And I say rare gems because, Netflix is just pumping shit out. Like, every day you go to Netflix, there's something new and a handful of new things, not just one new thing. It is just so saturated. It's full of stuff. And, the thing is, it's a lot of it. I'd say the majority of the content that Netflix does upload in terms of shows, I suppose, films are a bit different, of course, but the shows, you see that it's catered towards the masses, the majority, right? The type of stuff that people eat up, right? Mindless entertainment sometimes, right? And that's fine. Sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times people just want to chill on their couch at the end of the day or something and just, watch something. And Netflix caters to that audience quite a bit, I think. But you also do get some incredible shows, right? Some, niche shows like Mindhunter, stuff like Dark, and many others. Some of these are just escaping me at the moment, but there's many of these incredible shows on Netflix. But let's get back to the episode itself and the title of the episode, Monsters Abyss, right? Kind of leaning into Nietzsche once again. And of course, thematically, that is going to continue for the span of the series, I believe, of the story. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process, he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into the abyss will gaze back into you. I mean, it's iconic. It really is. And it's clearly tethered to the thematic core of the story as well, through the journeys of both Tenma and Anna. And one of the standout shots of this episode, it's almost kind of like a transition as well. It's quite an effective transition. At one point, I think this is around the time Rudy is in the basement, he's holding up the photo, right? And at this point, it's kind of clear that indeed that was Johan, young Johan. And at some point in his life, at that age, around that age, he was in the care of this lady, Kemp, right? Mrs. Kemp. And yeah, it appeared to be him in that photo, but of course the face is cut out. And, of course, Johan did his thing. He staged the whole thing for Jurgens, right? He manipulated him. He triggered him. He knew how to get him to, again, behave in a manner that he needed him to behave in, right? Of course, all of us know this since the early days of this anime, right? How manipulative he can be, how effective and how persuasive he can be. Right. And then you have professionals like Rudy in this episode kind of putting that out there. Right. It's almost as if it's this confirmation that, from my professional standpoint or perspective or opinion, I could tell you, that this man excels at these things. He's able to get the best out of these, fellow killers or other killers, but he is able to tap into them, their monstrous nature, and kind of drive it. But I digress. Let me kind of go back to my initial point, the transition, right? It's a shot of him, of Johan, but the face is missing. But then there's a zoom in, right into the face, into the darkness, into the abyss. I love that transition. It's a beautiful shot. It really is. But go back to Rudy and his findings, his hypothesis, his opinion on the matter. It kind of confirms a lot of things that they've given to us already in the first 18 episodes. Stuff that the audience can theorize about and kind of infer and kind of conclude about Johan and his capabilities, his abilities. And then you'll have Rudy say things like, it might be an attempt to erase his past, right? That's a concept that has been clear, right? It's been clearly presented up until this point. But again, now you have a professional coming to that conclusion as well. And, it's good for Tenma. It's certainly good for Tenma to hear this as well. Right? You see, he had a lot to think about. Some really interesting facial expressions. And then, of course, Rudy also said something like, he found his ideal family. Or that at least he thinks he's found his ideal family. Now, that is a bit of a tricky one to tackle, I suppose. Or could it just be as simple as, his ideal family is Nina, his sister, and he found her? Is it also maybe Tenma as well? Is this his ideal family? Tenma and Anna. Maybe that's more of a simplistic take on it, but there could be much more at play in terms of that hypothesis. At the end of the day, you kind of have to be careful about Rudy's findings because, you can take it as perhaps Urasawa's approach to giving the audience a bit of exposition or a bit of I don't know, a bit of clarity or some answers, or it legitimately could be just this man's findings and it might not actually end up being true at all, right? You see that a lot of these things almost get debunked. After a few episodes, you learn something about Johan and you begin to kind of have a clear picture, or a picture that is becoming a bit more clear, right? Recently, it was kind of guiding us towards this idea that he's this specimen, that he was made this way. And I'm speaking of the Kinderheim 511 arc, that potential or that possibility of Johan being the product or result of this East German experiment, right? Nope. Turns out he wasn't like that because of his time at Kinderheim 511. And, he was discovered. He was discovered like that. And of course, discovered by the Wolf, General Wolf. Then, much more recently, they've kind of set up this idea of Johan having split personality, right? Nope. That gets debunked here as well, right? And, I was skeptical about that. And that was kind of based on the fact that, they've firmly established that he's a master manipulator. I mean, I see a stack of letters that say the exact same thing Tenma got from that tank up top on their roof a few episodes ago, right? Now Tenma copied that down, right? So of course it's not Johan's writing on the letter that he shows to Rudy, and then of course Rudy brings out the letter to compare it to the other letters he found in that lady's house. So ultimately there wasn't anything unique about that message being left on the tank. He's used that message before. He's been sending those letters to that lady, right? And then Rudy believes that once he had no more use for her, he kind of puts this into motion and he gets Jurgens to do it for him. And then, of course, Jurgens is really quite confused about the notion of this man, this letter demon. I love that term. He's a letter demon. He truly is a letter demon. That explains it so adequately, doesn't it? His words have power. I mean, his letters alone can really persuade someone, right? Guide someone into a really specific place, on a really specific path, towards a specific path. But yeah, even Jurgens was a little bit confused about how exactly Johan was able to know so much about his childhood, know so much about him, right? And I like that touch of Jurgens feeling a little bit annoyed that this person is speaking to me like he's known me for so long. That annoyed Jurgens, that someone could know him like that. Someone could feel so familiar to him, right? But then he said, ultimately I ended up liking the letters, right? That the letters are actually quite enjoyable. But yeah, once again, it kind of showcases Johan's own abilities, his own inner detective, right? Him being able to kind of dig into the past of someone so specific, knowing how to make him tick, knowing how to trigger him, how to kind of persuade him. And of course, he's able to think like him, right? He's able to think like Jurgens or people of that ilk. But let's shift the focus to Tenma and Rudy and their, relationship or just their history together, right? They used to go to college together. Tenma was this new, fresh-faced student who showed up and kind of took the spotlight. You see that even in that flashback, a much younger Tenma is so positive. He exudes that positivity, and then he kind of attracts people to it. People are attracted to it, right? They are just attracted to his nature. And then, of course, you've got Rudy, who kind of loses his spot as top student. And there's that whole cheating thing that happens, right? And then, of course, later at the end of the episode, you see that Tenma confesses that he himself was also cheating, right? No, I didn't immediately kind of just take it at face value that he is telling the truth. And I think that's by design. I think, it is open to interpretation. I think it's open to us, the audience, to kind of discuss it and think about it, right? If he actually did cheat, it kind of gives us a bit of interesting insight, perhaps a bit of an early indication of his willingness to perhaps step outside of the boundaries of social norms. And that is playing out on a much larger scale at this point, right? Him being open to working outside of the law, right? Him choosing to work outside of the law. So, of course, if he did actually cheat, interesting insight for sure. As you saw, my first thought was that I think he's trying to kind of, just make him feel better about it, just kind of make him forget about it, because Tenma can tell, much like us, the audience, can tell that, this thing is something Rudy has carried for a long time, that it's something that really affected him. Because up until this point, Rudy was under the impression that Tenma always looked down on him, right? That there's that contempt for him. And, Tenma tells him, listen, you seem like an interesting enough guy. There just wasn't a chance for us to connect or get to meet each other. But then he also made sure to establish that they are friends now, aren't they? Right? I love that by the end of it, Rudy has this newfound respect for Tenma, and perhaps Tenma also has a newfound respect for Rudy and for everything he just did for him. Kind of helping him escape. I mean, to be honest, the cops are just so incompetent. These ones specifically, right? But yeah, you got to give Rudy a lot of credit, for kind of correcting his... See, I almost said his mistake, but, he is a professional, perhaps. And, his conclusion was that, yeah, Tenma might be this person that he's speaking of. He kind of came to the same conclusion as Lunge, right? Both are professionals. But, the difference is that, upon finding crucial evidence or coming across it, yeah, it became clear to Rudy, oh, okay, Tenma was not making all of this up, right? There is this person out there, right? And that, this friend of Jurgen's and this monster, this Johan, are one and the same. And then, of course, there's a really interesting meetup that they have, the first time Tenma kind of breaks into his office. And you see during that conversation that there's a few really cool things going on, right? Because for us, the audience, you have a professional, right? Even though he might not be likable, right? He doesn't have to be likable right up front or anything. Because, by the end of the episode, I like the character. I like Rudy. And of course, I'm not saying that he has to be likable as a person to be a likable character. No, that's not the case at all. But I am saying I really liked or enjoyed the story arc that I got in this episode for Rudy. It was such a fantastic self-contained one episode story arc, character arc, right? So yeah, it's good stuff, man. It really is. But yeah, as Rudy is explaining these things, there's a few things at play, right? For us, the audience, it's like, he's essentially explaining Johan, right? Because he'll be saying things like, oh, they're all big fat liars, or that many people think that all serial killers are introverts, right? But they're sadly mistaken, because many of them can be quite intelligent, sociable, persuasive, right? So on one end, it's like, oh, okay, he's essentially describing Johan, but also, he's also indirectly kind of speaking to Tenma as well, because at that point he has his doubts about Tenma as well, right? So these things are applying to Tenma as well from Dr. Rudy's perspective. And, if you go back to the cheating thing, ultimately Rudy didn't really need to cheat, right? It was more of an ego thing, because even if he didn't cheat, he'd still be top 3, right? He'd be second or third, but it didn't really end up mattering, did it? Because the new student, Tenma, was still kind of the center of attention, right? That's another ongoing theme, Tenma's positivity. People are attracted to it, as I touched up on a little bit earlier. And then on the flip side, you've got Johan and his darkness, people being pulled into his darkness, right? The monster's abyss. So, both of these men have different types of pull, don't they? Johan and Dr. Tenma. And clearly that is by design, right? Yin and yang almost. Though, of course, you also have the potential of yin and yang through Anna and Johan. Though Anna, I'm not... I think there could be a lot of interesting things there as well in Anna's character arc. Things that I don't even know yet. But yeah, to end off on the cheating aspect of it, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, does it? If Tenma actually was cheating, or if he just kind of made this up to, kind of put Rudy at ease. At the end of the day, the fact that he just said it and did it and was open to kind of doing that for Rudy, I think that's the message to take from this. And then once again, you see a common theme, don't you, through Rudy. And, this kind of goes back to people like Lunge, people like Eva, people like Dr. Schumann, right? Neglect, right? The way you see the people in your life and how you treat them and how you kind of go about allocating your time to them. Because here you have yet another person who is married to the work, a workaholic. His primary focus was on this, right? You see that he really kind of gets sucked into it. There's this really interesting line of dialogue, right? And this is him actually speaking to Jurgens, I think it was something like, oh, she said you're just a collector of, or a collector who peeks into people's hearts. Hell, you've got Jurgens who tells him you've got problems, doctor. But this whole thing he brings up a few times in this episode, right? First time in the opening as he is across Jurgens, and then the second time he's across Tenma, right? So, the fact that he repeats that story during the Tenma conversation as well, to me, it almost felt like, okay, he is kind of considering Tenma at that point already as a killer, perhaps. The possibility is there, and he wants to listen to Tenma and hear him out and see his approach and how he explains all of this about Johan, right? Who he initially thought was made up by Tenma. And listen, ultimately, perhaps that is something Johan is trying to accomplish. That indeed, maybe he is this figment of people's imagination. That he doesn't exist out there. That whole notion of him erasing his past and everything that kind of attaches him to something. So as far as Rudy's story about his wife leaving him goes, it is a possibility that he might just be making that up, right? Maybe it's just this thing. It's more of like an icebreaker type thing for him. There's a possibility of that in there. But you see that it totally could be the truth as well, given Rudy's disposition and his focus on all of this. And, that idea or that notion of the moments before taking a life, right? It's certainly explored again through Jurgens, right? Because Rudy asked him about, the potential sexual arousal right before killing someone. Or he asked him, do you kind of experience that before or after? So yeah, it kind of goes back into that aspect of it, doesn't it? Because a long time ago at this point, I suppose, around the time Tenma speaks with the blind man, who Johan did not kill, because of course the blind man never saw Johan. They're speaking of Johan's interest in that moment right before death. But that whole scene of Rudy going down below into the storage unit or the basement, that was really quite the scene. It's gripping. It really is. And once again, it's a bit more insight into the mind of Johan, right? And the things he's capable of. Staging all of that in that manner for Jurgens to get a really specific reaction out of him, a really specific feeling out of him, almost transporting him to a specific moment in time. To a moment in time that he doesn't really have too many fond memories of. Right, so yeah, I mean, it's a great scene. It's a great episode. But yeah, I think that should do it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or full opacity or perhaps even timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page and potentially supporting the channel. If you're interested, the links are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, things like Twitter and Instagram, if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 20. I like the sound of that. Until then, take it easy.